When I'm doing my own emotional work or I'm working with clients, helping them with their emotions, it never ceases to amaze me the incredible myriad ways that our nervous system has to repress and resist our emotions. And there's nothing bad or wrong with this, but it's just how we've been conditioned throughout our life that we didn't have enough support. We weren't held in the intensity of our emotions when we were a kid. Or we were taught in no uncertain terms that, our emotions aren't acceptable. Our anger isn't allowed to be here. If we're sad, there's something wrong. It needs to be fixed and so on. And so in this video, it's going to be quite a brief introduction to some ways you can start to explore and work with that resistance in yourself. Because most of our suffering, a lot of the tension we feel, a lot of the discomfort is because there are emotions that want to come up. And we have been taught to hold them in, to resist them. And we're doing this very unconsciously. And it feels like we have the accelerator and the brake on at the same time. So there's moments when anger wants to come up or sadness, but we have to hold it in. And we feel like we're kind of being torn or pulled in two directions at the same time. So there's a huge amount of freedom to be gained from helping that resistance to relax and being able to process that pain that we're holding within us. And so you can sort of tell, what are some of the telltale signs you're resisting emotions? Well, externally, you'll find that you're trying to manipulate reality in some way. So maybe you're getting defensive, right? When someone says something, it's like, what are you defending there? Maybe there's some hurt or shame there that's been triggered and you're getting defensive. Or maybe you're going the opposite way. You're getting kind of arrogant or, there's a lot of bluster. Again, maybe there's some hurt that you're defending. Or if you notice compulsions coming up, it's like that's a way of trying to numb out to certain feelings. There's all kinds of behaviors. Perhaps when we find ourselves really striving for something, striving to attain some goal, to prove that we're worthy, that we're good enough. Often that's masking a deeper emotion. And this is sort of the external behaviors. Internally, it can be often noticed as kind of a muscular tension, right? So your body physically tenses to hold in a particular emotion. You might notice yourself kind of withdrawing or shutting down, like someone says something and it's triggered a load of anger in you, but you can't express that anger. So instantly you just kind of freeze and shut down and go quiet. I think a lot of people have this, myself certainly. And that shutdown, that going quiet is a way of holding in or resisting that emotion, right? Or there are different ways we kind of dissociate or numb out. Our mind starts going crazy. We get sucked into a whole lot of anxious thoughts. These are all ways of keeping you separate, disconnected from your emotions and your body, which is where those emotions live. So a good way of trying to, the first step is always to become aware of this, which is the hard part, right? So now you know that it's a thing, that we are all resisting emotions a lot of the time. And so if you start noticing yourself acting out a little bit, your behaviors are going a bit wild, you feel like you're being torn in two, your mind's going a bit mad. It's like, what am I feeling here? Or more specifically, what is here that I don't want to feel? Right? What is here in my experience? That's a really good starting point. What is here in my experience that I don't want to feel? Then the next stage would be to identify the protector part, you could call it. Resistance can be kind of a negative word. And again, these parts are trying to protect you. They're on your side. So where is that protector part coming in? Maybe it's some tightness across the chest. Maybe it's some anger could be coming in. Emotions can be used to resist other emotions. We'll get to that a little bit later. Your anger could be coming in to cover over your hurt. Maybe you notice certain projections in your mind. You're running stories in your mind, and that's a part trying to protect you and justify yourself. Hey, it's their fault. I haven't done anything wrong. It's like this part's coming in to protect you. And the golden rule here, before I actually get into the techniques themselves, is you don't want to try and let go or push away the resistance. You want to let the resistance be itself. Let these protector parts be here fully. That's how we actually resolve them, is by fully feeling them, fully understanding them, fully allowing them. because when we resist our resistance, that only intensifies it. Let's get into the techniques. So the first one is belief investigation. So when you find that part of you, let's say it's tightness in the chest, and you can feel that underneath there's maybe some sadness or some hurt. You can kind of sense it. So just feel into that area of the chest and start to either intuit, or you can ask this part of you directly, like what are the beliefs your body holds around sadness? What does it mean about you if you're sad? What is this part of you afraid will happen if you allow the sadness, if you feel it, if you express it, if you let other people see that emotion within you? And of course, replace sadness with whatever emotion you're working with here. And you might feel into it. It's like, oh no, sadness. If I'm sad, that means that I'm weak. And I can't let other people see that I'm weak. They'll laugh at me. They'll judge me. Maybe there's memories of being at school. Like school, I couldn't show sadness. I couldn't cry in the playground. And you can start to, understand this part of you. It's like, okay, this part of me believes that sadness is a weakness. And if I show weakness, I'll get rejected and judged by the other kids. And it's really afraid of that sadness. Or maybe there's some anger you're working with, and again, you can feel yourself pushing it away or holding it in some way. You're shutting down, numbing out. Feel into that part, and it's like, or maybe you were taught that anger is bad, and that you saw your dad explode with rage, and this part of you was like, I'm never ever going to be like that. I can't ever be like that. I can't show my anger, or I'll lose control like he did, and that's terrifying. And so we have these conditioned beliefs around these emotions, and it can be really helpful to elucidate them with this kind of investigation. The second part is to amplify the resistance. Now, you want to do this gently, generally speaking, but you want to let the part of you that is resisting or protecting you to do that fully. So bring it fully into consciousness. So say again, you've got tightness in the chest. You want to just let it tighten, just lean into it. And then there are different ways you can be with it, or if it's a sense of like you can feel your belly holding in rage, like really let it hold it. Let that part of you just no, we're not going to say it. We're not going to say it. We're not going to say it. Or if you've noticed yourself freeze, and there's a sense of like, okay, I can't let them see that I'm sad. It's like I can't let them see. Just almost you're really inhabiting that little kid in the playground again, letting it be like, no, I've got to freeze. I've got to stay still. I can't let them see. To help you do this, you can add in some little nuances. So there's pendulation. So that means going between something that feels safer and the activation. So you could let the chest be tight, letting it tighten. Then coming back, putting your attention on something that feels more grounded. So your feet on the floor, for example. So you could stay there for 5, 10, 15, 20 seconds. Then put your attention back on that tightness, letting it tighten. And then finding a flow, just moving between. And that sort of gives you a bit of a contrast and can help bring a bit of safety to that tightness. Similarly, you can titrate, which is when you just feel a bit of it at a time. You're just letting yourself feel 5, 10, 20% of that resistance. So you're just putting your attention on the edge of it. You're not fully feeling that tightness. You're just touching a bit of it, which can feel more manageable. Another way of working with this is you can breathe in and out of that tightness. And when you're breathing in, you're letting it contract. And when you're breathing out, you're kind of relaxing it. And you're finding a rhythm of contraction and expansion that feels right for you. So these are all ways that you can feel into, lean into, amplify, fully feel that sense of resistance, right? And that helps it to, move through. It's only by feeling something fully that we process it. So onto the third approach. This is resourcing. Now, I have a whole video on resourcing that you can go check out on my YouTube channel. Just type in resourcing in my channel. Essentially, it's cultivating islands of safety in your experience. So what you want to do is you want to bring a bit of safety to the part of you that is protecting, i.e. that feels scared of the anger or the hurt or is afraid of the fear even. So say you feel quite frozen in your chest. You might just bring a hand to it that brings a bit of warmth. Maybe you'd sway the body slightly. This is all, while you're doing this, you want to let the freeze or let that protector part be itself, but then it's almost like you're bringing a bit of holding or support to it. So you excuse me, you might feel your hand on it, feel a bit of warmth. Breathe into it and just swaying. Maybe you could imagine yourself, you're in a safe place. You're no longer in the school playground with the bullies. Maybe you could imagine you're at a friend's house where you feel really safe. And you're bringing that part of you that's frozen and resisting, you're bringing that to your friend's house. Or if there's a person you feel really safe with, maybe you felt really safe with a pet, you kind of imagine that you're just with that pet, maybe at home, curled up on the sofa. And it can give you a bit of a sense of safety that you can bring to this part of you. If you want more details, again, go check out the resourcing video. I've covered this pretty quickly here. The fourth approach is, you could call inner child work, or you could call it finding the origin. What is essentially is we're going back to the root of this piece of conditioning or pattern. So say, for example, I had a client earlier today actually who felt some rage, but there was like an armor, there's like a shield, like a suit of armor around this person that was holding it in, that was a limiting factor. And when we explored it, it reminded the client of being with their dad, right? And their dad, had a temper, and there was a sense that she couldn't let being with him. Is like she learned that she had to hold it in, right, and build this suit of armor to hold in that anger, because otherwise all hell would have broken loose, right? And so by going back to that moment, we were able to connect to that little girl and help her feel seen. You can almost feel her, that part of you. Sometimes when you're feeling into like tightness in the chest, you can feel that younger part of you in there, right? When you're feeling that protector part, and you can connect to it and just like let that part of you know, I'm here with you. It's okay. I see that you're scared. I understand. And then you can resource it in various ways. Maybe you give that little child a hug, in your mind. You sort of hold that part of you here. You just help that little kid who felt so alone and scared in those moments to feel less alone, to feel more held. And in so doing, that can be an incredibly powerful technique to help some of that protection, that resistance to relax. Because fundamentally, the root issue is almost always that we were small, we were vulnerable, we were alone, we didn't have what we needed to deal with a particular emotional situation. And so we had to bring on defenses. And then it's just coming back to that part of us, that younger part of us, and helping it to retroactively receive that support and holding that it didn't receive, which really helps it to relax. And, tears can come with that. There can be all kinds of movement that comes with that when you really hold and talk to and connect to and help that part of you feel understood. You can talk to it, you can hug it, you can imagine you're on the beach with that younger version of yourself. These are really powerful techniques. The fifth one, which is a bit more advanced, it's kind of subtle, but very, very powerful and helpful to know about, is default emotions or secondary emotions. This is when emotion A, let's say it's anger, feels very unsafe. Maybe you learned that your anger is not acceptable. And what happens is that every time your anger is triggered, a safer emotion will come up, kind of to provide a bit of relief. So as soon as someone does something, violates your boundaries in some way, which normally would be responded to with anger, what happens is that maybe you burst into tears, like sadness comes up as a way of dealing with it. And the problem is that if it's a default emotion, it will just loop forever. You'll never be able to process through it. It'll just keep looping and looping and looping. And so it's helpful to, if an emotion is just looping and looping, start to ask yourself, okay, is there something else here that I don't want to feel? Like if it's just tears and tears, am I angry with this person or at this situation? Or it could be converse, if you're just irritable all the time, it's like, is there some part of me that's ashamed or hurt or upset here? And very, often, again, when you're in the situation of the secondary emotion and it's looping, there you'll find that there is. And these are all ways of helping the resistance to be felt, to relax, to feel held, to be processed all the way through. And when that happens, you should notice that it integrates, it dissolves, it relaxes, and then you have more access to that emotion. So you'll have more access to your anger, to your sadness. And that's a really good move in the direction to be able to process a lot of your pain and trauma and so on. And it's gradual. There are many layers of resistance, and we just work through them bit by bit, just taking little bite-sized chunks out of it. Then if you want more information on how to process things, I've got a blog and a video called How to Feel Your Feelings, which I'll link below and that you can check out. Any questions, put a comment below or send me an email, and I'll see you later.